Let us look at these exciting developments ranging from arrest of bandits from the northern part of the country by locals. Of course, I will allow you to watch that video. But again, we're actually looking at another interesting development. This time around, federal government decision to prosecute those two bandit leaders who were arrested by DSS. I'm going to bring you that shortly as well. But again, we're actually looking at a larger one. Of course, a situation where, as a result of the serious position of federal government, serious position of the president, Tinubu, seeing that Miyetti Alah, Magban have now come out to ban their members from grazing, moving cattle from state to state, and banning them from night grazing, and ultimately coming hard on them on the use of firearm, particularly AK-47. I think it's going to show that the government decision and position is already yielding results, because do not forget that I always say that we are dealing with a very formidable force. Talking about the fourth most dangerous terrorist organization in the world. Talking about the Fulani militias of Nigerian extraction. That is the way of course, global terrorism put it. And I think the government is gradually realizing that it becomes on them to protect life and property. Because if you look at Section 14, Subsection 2B of 1999 Constitution as amended, it's very clear that the welfare of the people and their security shall be the primary purpose of governance. So it is very clear that the Constitution puts the responsibility of protecting life and property on the shoulder, or rather shoulders, of those who occupy executive positions, the president, the governors, and the local government chairman. But as we go further, let me quickly bring you this one before we go into the video that has the capturing of Fulani militias. This one is talking about arraigning those bandit leaders. I must say it's a welcome development because it will act as a deterrent to others. I'm reading from Daily Post. It's a Nigerian government to arraign two captured Ansaru commanders. You go for that, they say that the federal government will on Thursday arraign the two top leaders of Ansaru terrorist group and Al-Qaeda affiliated network at the Federal High Court in Abuja. The two commanders are Mahmoud Mohammed Usman, aka Abu Barau Abbas Mukhtar, and his deputy Abubakar Abba, aka Isa Adam Mamu Al-Najiri. But I think what is important here is that once they are prosecuted and the government make a show of it by carrying the media along, it has a way of deterring other people from going into banditry. Because once the essence of law and order, the essence of prosecuting offenders of the law is to act as deterrent to others. I want to say that hitherto before now, we seldom see federal government prosecute offenders of the law in this regard. And that, for me, have been a major concern because it embodies other people to commit the same crime. If people are arrested for a crime committed, they are prosecuted, you have a way of deterring other people from going to similar crime. But meanwhile, let us look at this other area where, of course, the Magban itself is now taking upon itself as a responsibility to curtail the essence of its members. So this one says, breaking news, Miyetti Alah, Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria bans night grazing, state-to-state migration, and firearm by herders. I think this is a welcome development because we understand that naturally, nobody, when you are a private citizen, have rights to bear arms, except you are one of the personnel of the security agencies. And even at that, you must have approval from the authorities. The gun must be assigned to you before you can legitimately bear it. But the situation where you see, of course, cattle raiders bearing AK-47 uncontrolled, it has been a concern for everyone. But now that the action of federal government is now forcing the umbrella body of cattle raiders to start reining in their members, I think it's a welcome development. But again, I must say that the government must find a way to completely mop up this arm that is in their possession. Before I go further, let me quickly allow you to watch that video where Fulani, of course, bandits were captured in the northern part of the country. It's a welcome development because this time around, it equally came from the locals. Watch as we come back to further this conversation.
That's why they were. That is one of the business.
Ni da ma idan za su tafi sai wanci kira ni sai ce ma da aka hau sai in dauke shi muna tafiya ya dinga kiran sauran.
He said that he is their operational driver. They use golf, black in color. And the method is that they usually pick their syndicate members at different locations. They usually communicate through phones. So now Katara hanya Abuja.
Gaskiya duka dai ba zai kai su 20 ba amma hanyar ne tunawa hanya Abuja na kai su ya kai su 7 na hanyar Kano kuma zai kai ba su 8
He said for robbery and kidnapping, he took them to Kaduna Abuja Expressway for more than 7 times. Then Zaria Kano Expressway for more than 20 times.
So having watched that video, I think it is now becoming very clear, abundantly clear, that the locals have a role, a pivotal one for that matter, to play if we must see success and see an end to this issue of banditry in every inch of Nigerian territorial integrity. But one thing I always maintain is that the federal government, it is very clear, actually, both from the constitutional point of view, both from every point of view, that the government have a responsibility to protect lives and property. That is why particularly I'm comfortable with the current approach of federal government, where they are already giving energy to state police, and particularly the issue of forest guard, where the locals will be adequately and appropriately integrated into the system, because it has been established that all crime is local. And if all crime is local, it must be addressed, the insecurity must be addressed from that point of view. The locals must be given pivotal role to play if we must see an end to this. Because the intelligence that I needed to even need crime in the board, the actionable one for that matter, rests with the local. And of course, we must leverage on that to deal with all these emerging threats we see in every part of the country. But I think most importantly, we have to leverage on technology to address this. Because I clearly take note of the notion, or rather the assertion that came from the Zamfara State governor recently, that in his capacity as a governor, though he do not command the security architecture in his state, that he has been able to acquire technology to the extent of knowing, seeing, monitoring the movement and location of the bandits. Now the only thing that is lacking now is the power to control the security architecture, to move them to operation, to address insecurity. That is why personally I am of the view that it is high time we rejig the constitution, to give the governors who go by the name of the governor and the chief security officer of their respective states, to give them the power to give them some level of security power, so that they can be able to address this insecurity ravaging in their respective states. And it's sad that once somebody is radicalized, become hardened, it is difficult for that person to turn a new leaf. I think that best informed the position of the former governor of Kaduna State, talking about Malam Nasir El-Rufai, who made it very clear that the bandits do not repent, that the best treatment they deserve is to disallow them and send it to the creator who have the ultimate power to join them. So in that regard, I say that federal government of Nigeria must, as a matter of urgency and necessity, moving to acquire monopoly or coercive power, to police every inch of Nigerian territorial integrity, smoke the bandits out of their holes, set their running and bring them to justice. Of course, I must say that is what makes the government ultimate. Because if what the military would normally call rat tags, talking about the bandit, will be making Nigerians have sleepless nights. In some cases, the military personnel, police personnel, DSS personnel have at one point in time or the other become vulnerable to these kidnappers, to the extent that they do kidnap security personnel. So you now begin to ask, what is the hope of the common man? You now begin to ask, what is the hope of the common man? If the police personnel, the military personnel, who are supposed to be the ones who are protecting lives and property, are now becoming vulnerable to be kidnapped. So if the security personnel who are supposed to be the hope of the people are now falling prey of the kidnappers, it means we have so much task in our hands. and the government must rise to the occasion to address this as quickly as possible. Because for me, life is sacrosanct. Life is sacrosanct because as human beings, we don't have what it takes to create life. Any life that is wasted cannot be brought back to life, except by God's intervention. So to that extent, the government must do everything humanly possible to protect lives and property. More so, as is incumbent in their respective offices, the president, the governors, and the local government to protect lives and property, as the constitution has given them that responsibility. Another major issue is that the North, particularly the leaders, the stakeholders, must rise to the occasion and educate their children. Take their children out of the streets. Make sure the children acquire education from the cradle. Unfortunately, after Jonathan left office, the northern stakeholders jettisoned and abandoned the trajectory within which Jonathan was trying to educate the northern child. I say this because it has been proven that issue of banditry is directly linked to inability or failure, or rather refusal of northern leaders to educate the northern child. I note with concern the position of some northern leaders recently, where they try to blame federal government for some level of out of school children in the north. I begin to wonder, why should they stoop so low? Even as I agree with them that the responsibility of training the responsibility of training the Nigerian child rests with the 3 tiers of government, going by universal basic education. However, what behoves the federal government to do is the funding and policy direction. And that responsibility is the shoulder for every state in the federation, whether in the northern part of the country, whether in the southern part of the country. It is a responsibility that the federal government shoulder for all the states. Now, the question is, why is it that we have so much out-of-school children in the northern part of the country? To the point that in some states, you are having about 60-something% out-of-school children. In some instances, 50-something, 30-something, 40-something, 20-something, as the case may be. I must say it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because you are talking about children of age bracket between 6 and 16 years, having 60-something% of that age bracket not in school. I must say this, it rests me for crisis. These are potential Boko Haram members who are breeding. These are potential Ansaru terrorist organization members who are breeding. These are potential bandits who are breeding. There's no better way to put it. The North must, as a matter of urgency and necessity, rise to educate their children. Because even of course, San Francisco governor came out the other time to make it clear that some of the bandits, that they know where they come from. We go to show that these are people who from their state. So if they have gotten the right education from the cradle, of course, they will not turn deviants. Because from the psychological point of view, he said the newly born child that the brain is a tabula rasa, a clean slate, on which the critical write anything he or she wants to write. So by the time the society, the guardian, the stakeholders refuse to write the norms of the society into the child, the bandits, Boko Haram, will help them to write their own value system. I think it's part of the consequence of what we are all facing. Because what is that to happen in the north, talking about this insecurity, is already taking in root in the southern part of the country. That is why the northern leaders must rise to the occasion to educate their children, because this is already a national issue. Because the money the government would have used, talking about federal government, to address healthcare, to address education, to address every other area of human endeavor, is now being channeled to addressing insecurity. Because definitely, no meaningful development will take place in an atmosphere of insecurity. No investor will even want to come in an atmosphere of insecurity as we have it. Because the world is already a global village. The world sees what is happening in Nigeria. And of course, we must address it. We must attract investors into our economy. Because however I look at it, Nigerian economy is viable. Nigerian economy is robust. It has the potentials to attract investors. But I think what deters them is this level of insecurity, and we must address it if we must see investors coming the way they should come. That is why northern stakeholders, northern leaders must rise to the occasion to do the needful. And to do the needful is simple. To do the needful is to ensure that they educate their children. I'm not saying they should not give their children Islamic education. Understand that Islamia, as they commonly call it in the north, is like a composite thing for every northern state, particularly the one that is a Muslim environment. But why you do that? Allow them to acquire Western education side by side with that, so that they can even build their own human capital, so that the region of the North can contribute meaningfully to the Nigerian economy. But let me say a very big thank you for your time. This is Alah and Samatu.